Hello and welcome to Macroeconomics. Today we're going to be talking about the business cycle, and then we're going to look at goal number 2 of every economy, which is to limit unemployment. Let's first take a look at our business cycle. The business cycle is just a model that we use in economics to show the ebb and flows of economic output, or GDP. Now, over here on our y-axis, we have level of business activity. Really what this is this is our level of GDP over here. So we have our GDP on this axis. And then on our y-axis, we have time. And all economists are saying is at any given point in time, we'll call this 2018, we should produce a certain amount of GDP. We'll say $19 trillion. Well, how do we know we're supposed to have $19 trillion at this point A? Well, we use forecasting and things like that in economics, and we realize that, just like a weather a prediction or forecast, there are certain things that occur that allow us to forecast statistics and certain mathematics that we use to predict about how much we should be producing any given year. So we could, 2019, 2020, 2021, we should be producing. You'll notice that this full employment line or trend line is right here is what is predicted, right? I tell my students it's our possibility, which is kind of cool because when you start thinking about this, right, you start to realize, oh, I remember that graph. It's our possibility. So when we look at our production possibility curve, what does this line really represent? Well, that line really represents the real GDP possibility that we have as a country. We can produce capital goods, and we can produce consumer goods. Right? So that's what the production possibility curve is. It's really just a full employment line showing what we can produce. Now at point A, we're producing right where we said we should. So we can put a point A here, right? Now, if we were producing here at point B, right, we'd be producing somewhere out here in our production possibility curve. We really can't produce that, or we're overproducing. Some countries can overproduce, and we probably shouldn't be working out here. Or we could be producing here at point C, and well, that's not really good. We would be producing somewhere right here. And we don't want to do that. We want to produce where we have the possibility to produce. That's where we are efficiently using our resources. Now in macroeconomics, we want to make, right, this line right here, this black line is representing our real GDP in reality. The blue line represents our predicted GDP, what we have the possibility or what we should be doing. The black line represents what we actually are doing. So if any point we are here, right, let's say in 2019, oh man, we're working way up here, right? We're overproducing, right? And we have this inflationary gap right here, right? This is not good, right? We have a boom, or I tell people we have a bubble, right? It looks kind of like a bubble. If we move from that boom and we start to underproduce, right, we start to hit a recession. We're not producing as much. We're starting to see a downfall in GDP. Now, that doesn't mean that that's necessarily a horrible or terrible thing. Maybe we're going back down to where we should be. However, if we start to produce less than what we should be right here, right, then we get into a recession. We don't really call them depressions anymore, even though this, if you look at this depression here, is why it's called a depression or an impression here. We don't really have those that much. We're always producing, even during the Great Recession and things like that, there were times where we were underproducing, but for the most part, we were still producing. We were just producing at a very slow rate. Our economy was just moving very slowly. We were like right under here trying to, right, or down here trying to get back up to where we should be. Okay, so this, why did I draw this production possibility curve? It's because you can show the same things here as you can on our production possibility curve. Our production possibility curve is just a representation of our economy at a snapshot, a still image of where we are. Our business cycle is just a model of how sometimes we have booms and sometimes we have recessions, and sometimes we don't do very well. And the business cycles, for a long time, we thought, the business cycle really doesn't exist anymore. The great moderation, we're doing very well. But we still see these ebb and flows happening constantly in our economic history. So there's no reason to say that they're gone. Okay. So when do you know you have a recession? Well, the government breaks every year up into 4 quarters. Sorry, I'm drawing with a mouse. It's very difficult. And so 2018 is broken up into 4 quarters or 3 months, right? You're going to break 12 months up into quarters. It's going to be 3 months each. All they're saying is, imagine in Q1 we have expected growth, right? It's normal, right? Over here, it's normal. Then in the third quarter, right, we start to get into late summer. We start to realize, we have lower than expected growth. And then towards the end of the year, into fall and winter, we have another consecutive quarter of lower than expected growth. Well, that's 2 consecutive quarters or 6 months of decline in output. We're in a recession. Now, we could go into quarter 1 of 2019 and have great economic growth, and we're out of the recession. So a recession can last as long, a minimum of 3 months, to as long as 50 years or more. Hopefully not. I don't think government would last very long if you had a 50-year recession. So what's this talk of economic growth? What's the big deal when we talk about business cycles and production possibility curves and GDP? Well, we know economic growth is important. It's both important for standard of living. And how do we judge that, right? We have better goods and services. We have better things now than our grandparents and our parents. My kids are going to have a life that's going to be, I hope, economically speaking, which will be much better. They'll probably live longer. They'll have better medicine. They'll have better surgical procedures, and they'll make better wages. They'll have more leisure time. The economy will be able to meet their needs better than it did during my generation. And so that's why we want economic growth. It's not just to accumulate things, even though that does occur. It's also to make our standard of living better, to make life better for ourselves. In class, we talked about why we want economic growth. A lot of it has to do, a lot of my students said, well, stability. If you're coming from a poor country, there's a lot of instability in those countries. There's a lot of government and lawlessness. There's a lack of trust between citizens and their officials and the police. An advanced economy doesn't deal with those things. That's the reason why our country in the United States, we can save the turtles and not use straws, whereas a third world country may have a trash problem because they can't deal with how to solve their trash problem because they're trying to figure out how to solve the hunger problem. And so we hope economic growth can help solve those problems so that we can deal with more things. All right, goal number 2, limit unemployment. So I'm just going to apologize right now. This is going to be one of the longer videos that we use. So I'm going to go quickly through this so I don't bore you to tears. But basically, this is our unemployment rate equation. It's the number of unemployed over the number in labor force. Now, be very careful. It's not population. It's not how many people are unemployed divided by the number of people in our country. Remember, not everybody is able to work or should work, right? So you have to be in the labor force, right? You have to be 16 years or older. You can't be imprisoned. You can't be in the military. You can't be in school full time. You can't be retired. And you have to be willing and able to work. Even if you're a 30-year-old woman who is able to work, if you're not willing to work because, let's say, you want to stay home and raise your family, or you're a man and you want to stay home and raise your family, you're not considered unemployed because you are not in the labor force. And you're not in the labor force because you're not willing to work. A lot of students have trouble with that because they think, no, that person is unemployed. They should be working. And it doesn't work that way. Not in the statistics that the Bureau of Labor Statistics keeps at the United States federal level. They don't count that. You have to say, I want a job, I'm looking for a job, and I fit these requirements. All right, what are the 3 types? If you are considered unemployed, you are in the labor force, and you are not working, what are the 3 types? The first type is frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment just means that you have quit, you have been fired, not because of an economic downturn, but you're fired for, I don't know, incompetence, or you didn't fit well with the company, who knows. You've graduated some trade program, you've graduated high school, college, master's program, whatever it is. And now you are in the labor force and you're out looking for a job. So you're frictionally unemployed. One of the reasons we don't want 0%, a lot of people are like, oh, we want to have a 0% unemployment rate. No, we don't, because, that would mean 2 things. It would mean our economy is either A, completely stagnant and nothing is happening, or B, nobody's getting fired, nobody's quitting, nobody's graduating high school. I doubt that. So it's almost impossible. The second type of unemployment is structural unemployment. Structural unemployment is there's some type of change in the labor force or in your job, or there's something technological that takes your job. So you used to work in the auto plant assembly line, and now a robot does your job. Those, you do not have transferable skills. That job is gone. The job will not come back. And we don't like it, but at the same time, we're okay with it. Here where I'm from, we had a huge telephone wire factory and plant, and it became extinct. And a lot of workers lost their jobs, both at the executive level and the labor level. And while that's sad, we're okay with it. And most people, I ask my students in class, why are we okay with that? And it has to do with this creative destruction. We're okay with that because we don't use telephone lines anymore. We use cell phones. We use internet and computer systems and fiber optics and those satellites. So yeah, those people lost their job, but they did something else. They went and learned a new skill. They probably work in the cell phone industry or in the communications industry somewhere, or they are doing something completely different. So we're okay with it. A lot of people talk about automation and how they're stealing jobs. Labor has become automated for well over a century. We're going on forever, basically. It's been automated. Somebody's tried to create some type of machine that makes the job easier. While that is true, I don't really think that it's a problem, but some of you, I'm sure, do. Cyclical unemployment. This is the one we don't like, right? Again, structural, this is going to happen. We almost want it to happen. Cyclical unemployment is the type of unemployment we do not want to happen, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And this is just because the business cycle, right? We have a downturn or we have a recession. The example I give here is an auto worker is laid off due to poor sales, due to a recession. The steel worker is then laid off due to poor car sales. A waitress in Steeltown, USA is laid off because of poor sales due to the steel workers in her town not going to her restaurant anymore, et cetera, right? She stops buying groceries at the grocery store, and the grocery store owner has to lay off workers, and it just becomes this downward cycle of firing. That we don't like. So what does this create? Well, now we have two types of unemployment that we accept. And we call this our natural rate of unemployment, right? We call this our natural rate of unemployment, these two. And that's anywhere between 4 and 6%. We say if we have an unemployment rate between 4 and 6%, that's normal. That's a normal rate or an acceptable rate of unemployment. Anything greater than 6%, we attribute to cyclical unemployment. We attribute that to a downturn in the economy. Now, what we're going to do in the next few units is we're going to figure out, okay, we've talked about unemployment and we talked about, this. Well, what happens if this starts to spiral out of control, right? How do we fix it, right? How do we fix this problem? And that is going to be really what we do for the next couple units in economics. So let's first talk about limiting unemployment and the types of unemployment. Then we'll look at limiting inflation, and then we'll get into how do we fix those things? How do we fix a recession? How do we fix high unemployment? And how do we fix rising prices? Until next time.